Imagine being trapped behind a city wall while an enemy army surrounds you. No food, no way out. Every day the hunger gets worse and worse until people start doing unthinkable things just to survive. Now imagine the heroes of this story aren't generals or kings. They're four men forced to sit outside the gate because they're unclean, lepers. They're starving, forgotten, counted out, and yet they are the first to discover the miracle that saves a city. This is the story of 2 Kings 6-7, the siege of Samaria, and the night the enemy vanished. Samaria, the capital of Israel, is under siege. The Syrian army has surrounded the city so tightly that nothing can come in, and nobody can get out. Inside the walls, food becomes rare. The Bible describes how extreme it gets. People pay outrageous prices for things that shouldn't even be food. Desperation turns the city into a slow, silent collapse. The king of Israel walks along the wall, hearing the cries of his people. A woman calls out for help, and what she says is so horrifying, it shows just how far the famine has gone. The king tears his clothes in grief and rage, but instead of turning to God, he looks for someone to blame. He blames the prophet Elisha. He swears Elisha will die, because when people are desperate, they don't always want truth, they want a target. Elisha hears the threat, and he delivers a message that sounds impossible. He says essentially, tomorrow, food will be plentiful. Not next month, not someday, tomorrow. A royal officer hears it and mocks it. He basically says, even if the windows of heaven opened, that couldn't happen. Elisha answers with a warning. You will see it with your eyes, but you won't eat of it. The city is starving. The enemy is outside the walls. And Elisha says, in one day, everything changes. So the question becomes, how could this possibly happen? Now the camera moves away from kings and prophets to four men sitting at the entrance of the gate. They're lepers. They're not allowed in the city. They're not safe outside the city. They're stuck in between, rejected by society and vulnerable to the enemy. And they have a brutally honest conversation. Why sit we here until we die? If we stay here, we die of hunger. If we enter the city, we die of hunger. So they decide to do the only thing that might keep them alive. They walk toward the Syrian camp to surrender and beg for mercy. It's not bravery like an action movie. It's not a heroic speech. It's something simpler and more human. They refuse to die sitting still. So they rise, and they walk into the darkness. At twilight, the lepers reach the edge of the Syrian camp. They expect guards. They expect swords. They expect death. But the first tent is empty. No voices, no footsteps, no soldiers. They step inside and freeze. Food is still laid out. Water is still there. Clothes are piled up. Silver and gold are within reach. The camp looks like a place where people were living and then suddenly fled. The lepers eat. They drink. They grab treasure and hide it. Then they go to another tent, and it's the same. More supplies, more riches, no enemies. And for a moment, the story becomes almost surreal. Four outcasts, men who weren't even allowed inside the city, are now walking through an abandoned enemy camp, finding provision everywhere. Here's the miracle behind the silence. The Bible says the Lord made the Syrian army hear a sound, the sound of chariots, horses, and a great host. To them, it felt like Israel had hired powerful allies, and an overwhelming army was about to crash into their camp. Panic spread, fear multiplied, and in the confusion, the soldiers ran. They left their tents. They left their supplies. They left their silver and gold. They fled for their lives, because God can defeat an enemy without Israel lifting a sword. The siege ends, not by strength, but by divine disruption. Back in the camp, the lepers are still collecting and hiding treasure, until conscience hits. One of them says, "We do not well. This day is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace." In other words, We can't keep this to ourselves, because inside the city people are starving, families are dying, and these four men, outsiders, are holding the news that could save everyone. So they stop hiding treasure, and they run to the gate. They shout the message to the gatekeepers. The camp is empty, there's food everywhere. Word reaches the king, but the king doesn't celebrate. He suspects a trap. He thinks, they're hiding. They want us to leave the city so they can attack. So scouts are sent out. They follow the road, and they find evidence everywhere. Discarded garments, abandoned equipment, things thrown aside in a desperate escape. It's real. The enemy is gone. The miracle is true. The people rush out of the city to gather food. The market is restored. Elisha's tomorrow prophecy is fulfilled. But remember the officer who mocked it? The king places him in charge of the gate to control the crowd. And in the rush, the crowd tramples him. He sees the abundance with his eyes, but he does not eat of it, exactly as Elisha said. This part is sobering, because disbelief doesn't stop the miracle from happening, but it can stop a person from stepping into it. And that's the twist of the story. The first people to find the miracle were the ones with the least power, the ones pushed outside the gate. 4 lepers, 4 rejected men, 4 lives the city didn't value. But God used them to deliver good tidings to everyone. If you feel overlooked, counted out, or stuck in the in-between, remember this night outside Samaria. God can change everything in a single day. And sometimes the good news begins with the people nobody expected. Comment: what part of this story surprised you most? God emptying the camp, or God using the lepers first?